What the actual heck is trauma-informed practice? I feel like you've probably heard that word a lot, especially recently, whether it's, on course materials, on the news, on LinkedIn, on your feed, something coming up about it in a book that you're reading. And it is great that we are seeing it everywhere. But I think it's also great if we have a bit of a shared understanding of what trauma-informed means and why it is helpful, why it benefits you to take a trauma-informed approach. So that is what we're talking about today. My name is Emily Gibson, and I am a trauma-informed practice and well-being educator. I help people, schools, organizations, communities find their spark back, and we do that by supporting our whole selves through our well-being, learning how to tend to all our needs, and how to create environments and interactions that make people feel safe to engage in our work. And I love the T word. I am a trauma geek, and I specifically did my research on my thesis and my master's on trauma-informed practice because I wanted to do a deep dive. Because even though I had been working in that field for many years, I still felt like I didn't have a really good understanding of what it was. And I wanted to make sure that I felt confident enough about what it was and what it actually looks like so that I could teach people about it. So I define this as people and organizations having an awareness about the existence of trauma, aiming to prevent trauma from occurring, foster regulation skills in others, reduce opportunities for re-traumatizing, and create a culture of safety and care. So again, people and organizations have an awareness about the existence of trauma from a decolonized lens. They aim to prevent trauma from occurring. They support and foster regulation skills in themselves and others. They reduce opportunities for re-traumatizing, and they create a culture of safety and care. Well, that feels like a lot. And it is a way of being for sure. It does have quite a wraparound systematic approach to that. That makes us look at us as individuals, how we're interacting with others, and the environment we are encapsulating. So this is one of the reasons I have a certificate course on this so that we can really dive in and know how to fulsomely be trauma-informed, tailored specifically to our role and our organization. But when we are talking about being trauma-informed today, that is what we're talking about. People are like, oh, I think it's about working with people who've been in a car accident, or I think it's about, trauma therapy, or I think it's maybe about working with people who've experienced extreme suffering. And that would maybe fall into the category of awareness about trauma. Those are different experiences that may have caused someone to have a trauma reaction in their body. But that is not what trauma-informed is exclusively. It is about creating interactions, so the way we interact with each other, in environments or physical space, so that we and the people we're working with can fully engage with us, can fully take in your work. Because if we have accidentally created a re-traumatizing environment, if we've accidentally woven in some common triggers, if we accidentally have not supported our staff to understand their stress response, know when they're activated, and employ safe, techniques to collaborate with their nervous system and help them come back into the present moment, then we're not doing our work justice. Then we are not ensuring that all of our hard work is being well received by others. So that is one of the reasons that we aim to do trauma-informed practice. We know that there are probably people that we are interacting with who have experienced a distressing event or experience in their lifetime, or that their ancestors have experienced and they have passed that on through their DNA. So we know that we are probably interacting at some point in our work with someone who fits into that category. We probably ourselves fit into that category in some way. I certainly do. So I want to make sure that the way that I am delivering my work can be received by others, knowing that trauma experiences can impact the way that our nervous system receives information, processes information, and responds to information. So when we are putting ourselves out into the world, we are interacting with other nervous systems. I was talking with a consultant friend the other day, and she said one of the things that stuck out from a workshop she did on trauma-informed practice on regulation was that we are interacting nervous system to nervous system. And she's like, that is what I remember this person saying, nervous system to nervous system. And it is true. And for some people who have experienced a trauma experience or a trauma event, their nervous system is wired to perceive threat. So they can be in a constantly activated state. They are literally, their nervous system is constantly scanning for what the threat is. Who's going to come in the door behind me? Is something going to come up in front of me? Is something going to break? Is something going to startle me? Their nervous system is activating on high alert. And there are particular behaviors that we can notice from this, which I dive into a bit more in my workshops and courses so that we can better see when someone is maybe having a trauma response, which then honestly just reminds us to approach the work from a trauma-informed lens. Okay, I want to share a story which brings this to light about how being trauma-informed can make your job easier, make your life easier, and make other people feel safe and more comfortable to be with you. So, flashback to 2009, I was living and working in El Salvador in Central America. For the Permaculture Institute of El Salvador, I was an international volunteer there, and one of my roles was to write the reports for our funders. And so our funders were from the UK at the time, and so I was trying to create a project report on that, which meant I had to gather information from the folks who implemented the report or implemented the program and who participated in the program. Now, El Salvador has experienced a very, very, very brutal civil war. And I knew everyone that I worked with had lived in the country during the war and had been touched by the war. So I knew that trauma existed, and I knew that there was still a lot of violence woven and insecurity in the everyday lives of people. At the time, it was ranked the third most dangerous country in the entire world. At this point, I understood about trauma. I did not fully understand how it impacted people, and let alone really how to adapt the way that I worked with people so that I was not triggering them or re-traumatizing them. So we were at our demonstration site. We were at a really big gathering space, and I had the senior leaders from the organization there, as well as a bunch of the folks who participated in the program in the community, so community representatives. And I can't even remember exactly what I said. However, it was along the lines of me accidentally calling out one of the senior managers, who was a local, and making it seem as if I thought they hadn't done their job or they hadn't done a good job. I remember after the time being like, I feel like the way I said that should have been fine. But then years later, I remember thinking, no, Emily, that wasn't fine. That the way that I phrased that immediately got that person's back up. And again, when we're looking at being trauma informed, we understand that some people might already have their backs up. And we don't need to know that for sure in order to adapt our interactions. And so this person's response to the way that I phrased my question, which came out more as calling out, was to just annihilate me in the group. Just had a really big response and gave me a bit of a talking to in front of everyone. Obviously, I didn't feel good about that. I mostly didn't feel good about that because I was responsible for creating such a really big reaction from someone that I really respected and someone who was a friend. And I remember I went back and afterwards, the director of the institute wasn't there at the time at that meeting, but afterwards we were debriefing it and she was like, "What happened? Like, what did you do?" I was like, I don't know, I said this and I think that that was wrong. And then I had this really big reaction and the whole meeting just disintegrated. And that is what happened. So when we are trauma informed, we can anticipate that it can be beneficial to deliver our information in a certain way that is going to be well received and will not necessarily trigger someone. Now, I'm sure folks have had other examples. I certainly have had other examples in my life. So feel free to share in the comments if you like so that we can learn from each other. Because being trauma informed is absolutely a continual learning journey. I'm still learning all the time. And I actually love that about the courses that I facilitate because I'm always learning from other people different ways that they have figured out how to be trauma informed in their role. So if we think about it in the terms of perhaps you're a teacher, perhaps you work with kids. So sometimes we can see that hypervigilance when we talk about our nervous system always being perceiving threat. In a young person whose behavior is usually like, "Miss, what are we doing next? What's happening next? What's happening next? What are we doing next?" And you're like, holy cow, can you just relax and go play? That might be your reaction in your head, and we hope that that reaction stays in your head because we can appreciate that that is the behavior of someone whose nervous system is trying to keep them safe. And it is trying to perceive what is happening next so we can know if we need to protect ourselves in some way. Even if this is at gym class and there are probably very little threats. Although if you've ever played dodgeball, you know it's full of threats. Or if you're just not athletic like me, it's definitely full of threats. And so if we think about then this hypervigilant child, plop them in a classroom where we expect them to sit at a desk and learn, and their nervous system, their brain, because that's what we're talking about here, is more focused on assessing for threat and keeping them safe. That's working from our limbic system. That's working from our brain stem. That is not working from our prefrontal cortex or our thinking brain. And they do not have the capacity to learn. It is not physiologically possible because they're constantly scanning for threats. So if we are a teacher and we know that we have students who are coming into our classroom who have probably experienced a trauma experience either in their lifetime or passed down through their DNA, we want to make sure that we are weaving, as we talked about being trauma informed, is weaving regulation practices in ourselves and others. So what are we doing throughout the day? So we're helping people come back into their body, helping people engage their vagus nerve, helping people engage their rest and digest. The kids parasympathetic nervous system so that they can access their prefrontal cortex and they can learn from us. We also know that we want to reduce triggers in the environment. We maybe don't want to have a lot of, flashing light, loud noises, chaos. We want to have some type of routine. We want to post what we're going to do next so they can see, okay, recess is at this time, and then we're doing math, and then we're doing PE. We want to help people be able to show up in the best way so they can take in what we're doing. And that is why trauma-informed is important. I always say trauma-informed practice will make your life easier. Because when we are working in a way that is conducive for people to take in what we're saying and engage in our work, then we probably have less, defiant behaviors or what we would call challenging behaviors, and I'm putting them in air quotes because those actually are not people trying to be difficult. Those are nervous systems who need help, who are asking for a different way to collaborate with them. So when we are proactively presenting information in a way that a nervous system can take it in, we reduce those behaviors. And then we enable, in the case of the student, to learn. We are improving our student outcomes and our learning outcomes for our students. And if we're doing it really well, it's really, 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 really beautiful. We are also helping those young people or anyone, this applies to anyone, learn about their bodies, learn about their stress response, and learn how to know when they are starting to feel activated and then what they can do to bring down that activation, which is so beautiful, which is absolutely another video, but it's also what I teach in my courses. So if you want to dive into that, please check it out. But that is the skinny on what trauma-informed is and why is it beneficial. It is absolutely not just for people who've been in a car accident. It is for everyone, and it is there to support everyone. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments or reach out, and I'm happy to chat more.